Hi, my name is Jessica. I am a 29-year-old newlywed, embarking not just on a new chapter of love, but also on an unexpected battlefront that revolves around an inheritance, a whopping $50 million, or so the rumors say. But let me tell you, money, especially the kind you haven't even gotten yet, can turn fairy tales into nightmares real quick. My husband, Steven, is everything you'd want in a partner. Charming, kind, and utterly unaware of the storm brewing in his family. Then there's Melissa, my mother-in-law, whose first words to me weren't about how happy she was for us, but rather how thrilled she was about the good fortune I was bringing into the family. Frank, my father-in-law, tries to stay out of her schemes, but it's clear he's tired of her antics. It didn't take long for Melissa's true colors to show. She'd corner me at family gatherings, her eyes gleaming with a mix of curiosity and greed, asking when I would officially come into the inheritance. Stephen would chuckle it off, urging his mom to give it a rest, while Frank would shake his head, muttering about giving us space. But Melissa, oh, she had no breaks. Her fantasies about the inheritance grew wilder by the day. She talked about European vacations, luxury cars, and mansions by the sea as if the money was already hers. At first, I tried to deflect her probes with humor, hoping she'd tire herself out. Little did I know, it was just the beginning, and her obsession was about to take a darker turn. The situation escalated quickly after that. Each family dinner, each casual visit, Melissa found new ways to bring up my so-called inheritance. Stephen's admonitions grew firmer, his patience thinning. "Mom, you need to stop. This isn't right," he'd say, but Melissa waved off his concerns like swatting a pesky fly. One evening, as we gathered for Frank's birthday, Melissa's behavior reached new heights. Instead of celebrating, she cornered me in the kitchen, her voice low and urgent. "Jessica, you could help us so much. You know we've had financial troubles. Imagine what that money could do." Her words, meant to be persuasive, felt more like an intrusion, stripping away the joy of the occasion. I remember looking around, hoping Stephen or Frank would come in and rescue me from the conversation, but they were deep in another room, laughter spilling out every now and then. I tried to laugh off Melissa's comments, a nervous chuckle that didn't quite mask my discomfort. "Melissa, let's focus on today. It's a happy day," I suggested, attempting to steer the conversation away from the money. But Melissa was relentless. Her once casual inquiries turned sharp, her tone tinged with an edge that bordered on hostility. "You think this is a joke? We could be living so much better, Jessica." "You're being selfish by holding back," she snapped, her words slicing through the festive atmosphere like a knife. The drive home that night was silent. Stephen sensed the shift in my mood, his hand reaching over to squeeze mine, a silent apology hanging in the air. I squeezed back, trying to push away the rising dread that Melissa's greed was not just a passing phase, but a looming storm that threatened to sweep us all away. The confrontation that shifted everything happened on a chilly evening in late autumn. Stephen was away on a business trip with Frank, and I had reluctantly agreed to stay at their house, thinking it might soften Melissa a bit, bridge some gaps. How wrong I was. Melissa waited until we were alone, and then, with a cunning smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, she pulled out a stack of papers from a drawer. "We need to talk seriously about your future with my son," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. I frowned, puzzled. "What about it, Melissa?" She slid the papers across the table toward me, a postnuptial agreement. "I think it's time you signed this." "For the family," she urged, her eyes locked on mine. The document was a renunciation of any financial claims in a potential divorce. "It's just a precaution, dear. You understand." Her casual mention of divorce and precaution sent a cold shiver down my spine. "This isn't right, Melissa. Stephen knows nothing about this, does he?" I protested, my voice shaky but firm. "No, and he doesn't need to. This is for us, the family. It's to protect our interests," she insisted, her tone hardening. I stared at the document, feeling trapped and betrayed. Here was my mother-in-law, whom I had tried to understand and respect, blatantly manipulating me into securing her family's financial future at the expense of my marriage. "Think about it, Jessica. Do it for us, Melissa pressed, her eyes gleaming with a mix of desperation and greed. The room felt smaller, the walls inching closer as the weight of her expectations bore down on me. It was a pivotal moment, one that would define the boundaries of our relationship and set the course for future conflicts. But in that instant, cornered and isolated, I realized the depth of Melissa's manipulation and the precarious edge on which our family balance lay. The room felt colder as Melissa's presence loomed larger, her expectations clear and unforgiving. The postnuptial agreement lay between us on the table, a stark, tangible symbol of the betrayal I was experiencing. I glanced at the door, feeling a desperate urge to escape, but Melissa's voice anchored me in place. Jessica, this isn't just about money. It's about making sure we're all secure. You'll sign it, won't you? For the family. Her tone, once pleading, now held a sharp edge of coercion. I picked up the pen, my hand trembling. The thought of Stephen, oblivious to this betrayal, gnawed at my conscience. How could I explain this to him? How could I tell him that his mother forced me into a corner to sign away my rights, potentially against our future together? Melissa, this isn't right. Stephen should be here, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. But he's not, and we need to handle this now, Melissa insisted, her voice hard. You're part of this family now, Jessica. Signing this is just a formality. The weight of her gaze, the finality in her voice, the isolation of the moment, it all pushed me to a brink I hadn't known before. With a heavy heart and a sense of betrayal enveloping me, I signed the document. The scratch of the pen sounded unnaturally loud, each stroke marking my reluctant compliance. As soon as I laid down the pen, Melissa's demeanor shifted. She smiled, a cold, satisfied smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thank you, Jessica. You've done the right thing. But as I left the room, the signed papers on the table like a testament to my capitulation, I felt anything but right. The betrayal was not just Melissa's but mine too, for not standing firmer, for not leaving the room. I had signed away a part of my autonomy under duress, and as I walked away, the reality of what that meant for my future with Stephen began to sink in. The days following the signing felt like moving through a fog. Each smile, each conversation with Stephen over the phone, felt tainted with the secret I harbored. By the time he returned home with Frank, the weight of the postnuptial agreement felt unbearable. It was Frank who noticed the change first. Jessica, you seem off, he observed one evening, his gaze kind yet probing. Is everything all right? The concern in his voice broke the dam. With Stephen and Frank sitting across from me in the living room, the story spilled out, not just about the document, but also about how trapped Melissa had made me feel. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with disbelief and hurt. Stephen was the first to speak, his voice a mix of anger and shock. She did what? Jessica, why didn't you tell me immediately? I shook my head, tears spilling over. I didn't know how to. I thought I could handle it, but it felt like too much. Frank's reaction was swift, his disappointment in Melissa palpable. This is unacceptable. She's crossed a line that shouldn't even have been approached. Together, we confronted Melissa that same evening. Her initial attempts to justify her actions were met with firm opposition from Stephen and Frank. The revelation of the postnuptial agreement, now a symbol of her betrayal, shifted the dynamics irrevocably. Mom, how could you manipulate Jessica like this? Stephen's voice cracked with emotional strain. We're supposed to be a family. Families don't do this to each other. Melissa faltered, her facade crumbling under the weight of her son's condemnation. I was just trying to protect us, she stammered, but her words rang hollow. The support from Stephen and Frank was immediate and unwavering. They assured me of their trust and respect, condemning Melissa's actions unequivocally. That night, we decided as a united front that such deception could not stand. It was a pivotal moment, one that began the process of healing and realigned our family values away from deceit towards transparency and mutual support. In the wake of the confrontation, the atmosphere at home turned palpably tense. Melissa, faced with the united front of her family, struggled to defend her actions. Her attempts to justify her behavior only deepened the divide, her words echoing hollowly against the walls of the family she had tried to manipulate. Stephen, his relationship with his mother frayed, sought solace in clarity. We need clear boundaries, Imam. What you did was not just overstepping. It was manipulative and wrong, he said during a particularly strained dinner. Frank nodded in agreement, his disappointment in his wife manifesting as a silent, stern presence at the table. Melissa's initial resistance wilted as the days passed, her isolation within the family becoming more pronounced. Her desperate explanations and attempts to salvage her standing fell on deaf ears. I thought I was doing it for the right reasons, she pleaded one evening, her voice cracking with desperation. But the damage was done. Stephen and Frank, once perhaps too forgiving, now recognized the need for decisive action to protect their family's integrity. This isn't just about a mistake, Imam. It's about trust, and you've broken it severely, Stephen asserted, his decision resolute. It was Frank who took the lead in setting the new course. We can't continue like this, he declared. It's clear that things need to change for us to heal and move forward. The decision was made. Stephen and I, with Frank's support, began looking for a new place to live, a space to start afresh, away from the oppressive influence of Melissa's actions. The process of distancing was painful but necessary, each step away from the old house a step towards reclaiming our peace and autonomy. As for Melissa, the realization that her actions had irreparably harmed her relationships with her son and husband seemed to finally take hold. Her once commanding presence diminished, replaced by a quiet, almost resigned acceptance of the consequences she now faced. The family she had sought to secure with manipulation was now moving beyond her reach, choosing integrity and mutual respect over material gain. As we settled into our new home, a sense of freedom enveloped us. The fresh start was invigorating, and for the first time in months, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was during one of our first dinners in the new place that I decided to address the elephant in the room, the inheritance that had sparked so much discord. Stephen, Frank, I began, clearing my throat. There's something important I need to share about the inheritance. Their attention fixed on me, bracing perhaps for another storm. But this time, I was here to dispel fears, not stir them. The truth is, my financial situation is not what Melissa imagined. The $50 million was a gross exaggeration fueled by rumors and wishful thinking. I watched as their expressions shifted from tension to confusion and then relief. Stephen reached for my hand, his touch warm. Jessica, why didn't you say something sooner? I thought I could handle it, and I didn't want more strain on us. But I see now that honesty is what keeps us strong, I replied, squeezing his hand. Frank nodded in approval, his voice firm yet comforting. That's right, Jessica. We're family, and no amount of money, or lack thereof, changes that. With the air cleared, we discussed our financial plans openly, setting realistic goals and budgets. It was liberating to talk about money as a tool, not a treasure trove that defined our worth or our future. The power dynamics in our family shifted that evening. Melissa's assumptions had clouded her judgment, leading her down a path of greed and manipulation. By clarifying the reality of my finances, I not only corrected her misconceptions, but also reclaimed my agency. This newfound transparency reinforced our family bonds, grounding them in truth and mutual support. It was a pivotal moment, marking our commitment to navigate our lives together, free from the shadows of deceit and unmet expectations. In our new home, the past shadows began to feel like distant memories. Stephen, Frank, and I spent our days turning the new house into a home, each stroke of paint and piece of furniture symbolizing our fresh start. The open, honest discussions we had established around our finances continued, strengthening our trust and deepening our connection. One evening, as we sat in our nearly finished living room, Frank brought up the topic of Melissa. I've started the process for a divorce, he said quietly. It's not just about what happened with the postnup. It's about years of manipulation. I need to find my own path. Stephen and I nodded, understanding the painful but necessary decision. Dad, we support you, Stephen assured him. It's important that you do what's best for your happiness. As Frank pursued his independence, we also supported him, just as he had supported us. The bonds we forged in those months were not just about shared experiences, but about shared values and respect. Our move was not just a physical relocation, but a symbolic one. Leaving behind the place where family tensions had escalated allowed us to focus on what truly mattered, each other and our collective well-being. We turned our energies towards the community, engaging with neighbors and participating in local events, which anchored us more firmly in our new environment. This chapter of our lives, though born from turmoil, was filled with growth and healing. It was a testament to our resilience and commitment to each other, proving that even the deepest wounds could heal in a nurturing environment. Our new beginnings were marked not by the past specters, but by the possibilities of the present and the hope of the future. As autumn painted the trees in hues of gold and crimson, the consequences of Melissa's actions became starkly clear. The divorce proceedings finalized, and the reality of her financial and emotional situation settled in like the season's chill. Melissa, now living alone, faced the repercussions of her relentless pursuit of wealth. The lavish house, once a symbol of her ambitions, was put on the market. The need to downsize was a bitter pill to swallow, her dreams of luxury dissolving into the harsher reality of her decisions. The neighborhood buzzed with whispers of her downfall, a stark contrast to the warm receptions she once enjoyed. The community, once an audience to her grandeur, now served as a reminder of what she had lost: respect, family, and security. Stephen, Frank, and I occasionally heard updates about her struggles through mutual acquaintances. While there was no pleasure in her misfortune, it served as a somber reminder of the costs of greed and manipulation. Despite the challenges she faced, the shift in our family dynamics allowed us to find peace. We often reflected on the ordeal, not with resentment, but with a newfound appreciation for honesty and solidarity. As the first winter in our new home approached, we gathered around the fireplace, the crackling of the logs a soundtrack to our musings. We had emerged from a storm stronger and more united. Our home was not just a place of refuge, but a testament to our resilience and commitment to what truly mattered: each other. The story of our family, marked by trials and tribulations, ended not with the fall of one, but with the rise of many. It was a poignant conclusion to a chapter that, while painful, taught us the enduring power of integrity and the unbreakable bond of family.